So as a lot of you guys already know, I fried one of the bottom rod bearings on my Banshee. You can see that moving up and down. It's not supposed to be like that. The whole rod might actually be shot. I'm not sure yet. I haven't taken it fully apart. But it nicked up the head, chewed up the inside of the case, I'm guessing. All that metal went up there and chewed up the inside of the cylinder and the piston and everything. So I'm going to show you a full rebuild on the bottom end and top end of a Banshee. And I'm going to show you how to take the engine out. Everything that consists of this rebuild I'm going to do a video of. I already disconnected the carbs, took off the airbox, took off the plastic. All that stuff's really simple to do. I've done videos on it before, so if you're unsure on how to do that, then just look at my other videos. So for engine removal, just start off disconnecting everything that is connected to the engine other than the bolts that hold the engine in place. So disconnect your stator, take off this coolant line, disconnect your clutch, the two carb overflow tubes, take those out, disconnect your water pump here. If your cylinders aren't off, you're going to have to take your head and your cylinders and disconnect both of these coolant hoses off of there. I'm going to have to take off my Nerf guards, which is just these two bolts, and then the two on the other side. I have to disconnect the Kickstarter. I'm going to take off this cover. I'm going to disconnect the other side, and I'll show you how to do a clutch disassembly and a stator disassembly before I take the engine out, just because they're easier to do with the engine still in the quad. I've got the Nerfs and the pegs removed. I put the bolts back in the holes. They're there and there just so that I don't lose them. Remember where they go. If you're going to get the frame powder coated or something or painted and you need to have the bolts out, then I would recommend getting a piece of tape and tape all the bolts together and then label the piece of tape with wherever the bolts go. So now I'm going to take off the stator cover, finish disconnecting the clutch and the coolant hoses, and then I'm going to go over the other side, take off the Kickstarter and the clutch cover. So to get the stator nut loose, after I got the cover off, you have to have one of these special, it's basically like a flywheel pulling tool. This part's used to get the nut off, and then there's another flywheel puller that actually pulls the flywheel off. This is also a multi-purpose tool. The other end of this is used for the clutch side. Let me show you how it works. Basically, there's just those two parts right there that stick out. Those go into these holes on the stator, and then on the other side there's grooves on the clutch, and I'll show you how to use it on that side. So I just put it on there and then rested it on those bolts that I left in, and then just used the 17mm socket and a breaker bar and cracked it loose. It came loose no problem. Now in order to pull the flywheel off, you're going to have to buy this tool. This one's about 10 bucks. I'm not sure how much that one was. I think it's about 30 or 40. We're actually considering renting out these two tools and also the case splitter, the case separator. We'll just hold a deposit for the value of all three tools and then charge like $20 or $30 plus shipping, and you can just ship them back whenever you need to or whenever you want to. Flywheel is reverse threaded, so back this bolt out all the way, tighten that down, and then you're going to want to put a wrench on here and hold this one and then tighten this one to pull the flywheel off. So there's the flywheel removed. There's that groove for the flywheel key. It's going to pop off at once if it's never been removed before. There's the flywheel key right there. There's your stator. I'm also going to do a video of the do-it-yourself timing plate mod. It advances your timing however much you drill it out, but it's basically just moving these four holes in the stator, or these three holes in the stator, 3 to 4 millimeters to the left. Basically, you just file it flat, re-drill it, and then place the stator cover on rotated clockwise about 3 millimeters, and that advances your timing. But I'll do a more detailed video on that further later on in the rebuild. So that's the flywheel disassembly side. The reason why I'm doing this while it's in the quad is because that nut can sometimes be a pain to get off. Same with the clutch side. So that's why I'm taking it apart now. Now I'm going to take off the sprocket, just bend this plate back I have mine bent over right there to hold the nut in place. You always want to replace these. I'm definitely going to be replacing mine when I do the rebuild. So bend that back, take the nut off, slide the sprocket off, and get that out of the way. I'm going to show you how to take out the Kickstarter. This is the rebuild kit. It's basically just those 4 things: the ball bearing, the spring, the O-ring, and the screw. Here's where the screw goes. Take that off. All this stuff will fall out, but I really don't care because I bought a rebuild kit. So there's that O-ring that's fried. There's the ball bearing. And the spring is right behind the ball bearing. So those are those. There's actually the rest. I actually put different O-rings on this just because it was rattling real bad. So now that's how that comes apart. Take this bolt off, slide off the rest of the Kickstarter, remove these bolts right here. Obviously you're going to want to make sure that your transmission fluid is drained. Mine already is. That's just a bolt on the bottom. That should be fairly easy to do. So there's the clutch cover removed. It's really easy to do. Just those bolts are on the outside. And then if you want to leave your brake on, you might have to push it down a little bit or disconnect the spring and let it drop in order to get the cover off. There's a gasket on the back. Mine's pretty shot. Basically, you have your coolant line right there. You got your clutch in the middle, your Kickstarter with your kickstart spring. I'm going to remove this center nut and then remove these in a lug nut pattern and then take off the fiber and steel plates. Took that nut and washer off. They go on in the middle right there. That's your clutch adjustment. I'll show you how to do that on reassembly. Then take off the 6 bolts and washers and springs. Take them off in a lug nut pattern. So do like a star pattern like that to take them off. Then your pressure plate should slide off. That's your pressure plate. And I got a nice clean towel here I'm going to lay everything out on. Alright, now you're going to have to bend this down flat. And after I take the friction and steel plates off, you're going to have to bend that down flat and then use that tool that I showed you earlier to get this nut off. Now in order to make this an easier one-person job, I got the tool clamped on there. It's supposed to go in these grooves almost straight across from each other. I'm going to remove the Kickstarter. That way I can flip the tool all the way around and rest it on the brake so that I can crack that nut loose. Some people might not like that idea, but it works for me. So in order to take the kickstart assembly off, just undo that spring that's hooked on right there, and then the whole thing just slides out. Right like that. Now I'm going to flip this around. And rest it on there, and then it's a 32 millimeter socket to get that nut loose. Alright, now I got that nut loose. I'm going to take that off. And once again, this washer behind it that you bend to hold that nut in place, you're going to want to replace that on reassembly, so order one of those. As far as assembly order goes, for the clutch, the pressure plate goes on the outside. You have the pancake bearing, or I'm going to get a pancake bearing to replace this, that goes in the middle of that. You have your friction plates behind that, steel fiber, steel fiber, steel fiber, back and forth. Then you're going to have your nut that holds on your clutch basket with the washer behind that that gets bent over. You can see it's cracked right there. That's why you want to replace it. You're going to have your inner clutch basket, or your pressure plate rather, that goes on underneath that. The washer is going to go on the inside right there on the pressure plate. Then you're going to have your clutch basket itself, and on the inside of that is where this piece goes, and then behind this piece is this washer right here. Now I'm going to use a magnet and pull the ball bearing out of there. So behind that piece right there, it's kind of dimpled in the middle. That's where this ball is. When you reinstall this ball, you want to make sure it's greased with some kind of ball bearing grease or something like that is what I recommend. So when you take this off, there's a chance that this ball could fall out, so be careful that it doesn't roll across the garage or get lost in the dirt or anything like that. So there's really only 4 main bolts holding in the motor. There's one right there, 14 millimeter on both sides. One right there, 14 millimeter on both sides. And then the 2 that mount underneath here. These 2 are both motor mounts, and there's 2 14 millimeter bolts on the front right there that you can remove. And then the motor's completely free now, so I'm going to pull it out and go set it on the table.